All right. Hey guys, this is Henry. He's been a really good friend of mine for a long time. And he's building a tool called SEO Space, aka the Yoast for Squarespace, which is a pretty rad way to introduce your product. But I wanted to bring him on because when people think SaaS, they often think CRMs, they think these big, big tools. But he's been able to build a very profitable tool in, to be honest, a market in an industry that I didn't even know existed before I actually met him. So, Henry, thanks for your time today. Are you ready to sort of take us from the top?
Cheers, mate. Yeah, ready to go. It's interesting how many people say what you said as well. But yeah,
Yeah,
I'm excited.
awesome. All right. So, first and foremost, I think that your journey getting into SaaS is very interesting because I think when people think about starting a SaaS, they think about raising loads of money and sort of, having to come from, McKinsey and YC and all these big prop firms. And I think the way that you got into SaaS, correct me if I'm wrong, was almost by accident because you were running your agency first and then you segued into this.
Yeah,
So, yeah, tell us how you got
yeah.
into it.
Well, actually, before that, I actually did a SaaS startup program in South Wales. So, like the richest man in Wales, he made his money in tech, and basically, I think 10 years ago, he went to the UK government and he was like, name one British tech company, like
Yeah.
unicorn tech company. Can you name one unicorn British tech company?
Me?
Yeah,
Um, yes, I would say Revolut.
Revolut, good one.
Yeah.
The government couldn't. So
Okay.
he was like, in fact, I think they named a couple, and he was like, bought by a Japanese company, bought by American company. Like there was no UK based tech companies, big ones that they could name. So he created like this tech incubator, basically YC, but in South Wales, which makes it a lot less attractive.
Yeah,
15
can
month
imagine.
program. They actually pay you as well for like 15 months. So that's how I got into SaaS. And then after that, that business didn't go very well. I learned a lot, fucked up a lot of times. I then
What
started my
was
agency.
what was your role in that? Because you didn't have SaaS experience before that, I think.
Yeah, no, I didn't have SaaS experience. So like they teach you from zero. They're only taking recent graduates and they teach you from zero how to start a software business. My role was the business lead. And then I paired with two other tech guys to essentially find a problem, build a solution, and raise funding for it. We got offered £290,000 seed funding. Um, Turned that down because we were like, we weren't sure whether weren't 100% confident if it was going to do well. So we were like,
Okay.
instead of taking the funding and then messing up, let's try and bootstrap it for a few months. It failed, which is then where I started my agency. So yeah, you're right. Like a bit of unconventional, but I still
Yeah.
learned SaaS, started my agency for cash flow, and then moved on to SaaS again later.
I want to dig a little bit deep into that early SaaS startup because this is the first time I'm actually hearing of it. I know what you're doing now, but that part I didn't know. So you got into it, recent grad, obviously doing business dev. So I assume you were non-technical, so focusing on marketing,
Yeah,
sales, like that side
yeah,
of the
exactly.
business. And then two tech guys. What was the primary reason you think it didn't work? Was it a business generating problem? The idea? Like, what do you
Yeah.
think went wrong?
So the problem in that, so it was like a software and waste management. So helping
Okay.
businesses save time and effectively deal with like waste management, recycling, particularly around like telecommunications. So I think one thing that would have made it difficult from the start is when you're in waste management, yeah, it's like a multi-billion, probably trillion-dollar company across the globe, billions in the UK. But obviously it's always a race to the bottom. So
Yeah.
even if people are relying on paper and are relying on shit, slow processes, it's still a race to the bottom. So it's not like how much do we invest because of the upside? It's no, how do we do this as cheap as possible? Which when you're dealing with like older guys, like middle age, and not always like tech savvy and are willing to invest.
Yeah.
Maybe similar to construction, you're dealing with like older guys, less tech savvy, longer sales cycles. So that was it from the start. But the thing that actually made it difficult was the companies that we were working with to get feedback from in order to come up with the idea, user testing, etc. They were like real intense competitors.
I see. That was what I was going to ask. Is it sounds like a very very small TAM, especially in the UK. Like there must only be a handful of companies at scale who can afford that. So,
Yeah.
sort of, how did you approach that, and also where the idea came from in the first place?
The idea came from, so like the unique thing about this setup, which makes a lot of sense because this billionaire has created it. He's like, instead of you guys working super hard in order to find businesses that've got problems, here's all of my network. Speak to them, find their problems, build a tech solution for them. So I was like pitching to like the CTO of British Heart Foundation, the CTO of Ocado, which is a huge tech business itself,
Yeah,
just through his contacts. So that's where like I got that exposure, and basically we spoke to a few of his businesses, his connections in waste management. Spoke to people at BT, and obviously BT is like 19 billion in revenue. So like there was a few, and I didn't know how problematic this would be at the time. There was a few businesses, but if you're able to get like a contract with BT, like that one client alone, even if there's like 100 suppliers that would use the software, that client alone could be like worth multi millions a year. Um,
so I guess just a very unique situation than how you would approach bootstrapping a SaaS today.
yeah, it was very, very unique, which is sort of that like we literally had one of those people that we were doing testing with. He saw I liked one of the competitors' LinkedIn posts, and they were like that fierce competitors because they were all competing for this contract for BT. And
Yeah,
ours was like a solution because this guy made like his billions in telecoms. He was like, here's all my contacts at like British Telecoms, make this work. So we like
yeah,
built the solution, but they were like competing again against each other that much. One of them saw that I liked their competitor's LinkedIn post and like called me up, and he was like, why the fuck are you speaking to my competitors? And I'm sitting there thinking, well, I'm just trying to create a SaaS for like lots of people to use. I don't care about your competitors.
yeah.
Um,
Just cool.
so that was like a pretty abrupt learning of like some pretty cool things that you need to like run a SaaS, which is often like an easy to reach target customer,
Yeah.
and a lot of them.
Okay, now that's a very unique start out in the SaaS space. I must say, I've heard some stories, but that's unique. And a lot of companies, I think, actually prefer those type of deals because you're right. If you land 3, 4 clients, it completely builds your business, right? Versus having to do marketing and content like this and everything else. But there's a dark side to it as well. Okay, but let's park that. So from there, you go to the agency. The next thing that I wanted to ask is with agencies, you're usually used to like a 2, 3, 4K retainer. And going from signing a client for 2, 3, 4K to signing a client for 17 a month, 29 a month, 49 a month, like that's a much, much, much slow burn focus. I don't think people understand that. With the agency, you sign 5 clients, you can travel the world, you can buy your Rolex, you can do your thing. With the SaaS, it's really not that way. First of all, it's a lot less. Secondly, it's margin that comes into it, and it's slow burn. It takes a long, long, long time. So I want you to sort of walk through as someone who has run both and now even has elements of both as well. What you see is sort of the big, big difference there between the two, aside from just the financial stuff. Like, how do you approach the mindset to, I sign a client, but basically that's only worth 29 bucks?
Yeah, yeah. So I guess how I approached it in the early days was building a wait list because I was very much aware of that. I was like, in order for this, because it's quite low ticket, between $15 and $100 a month. But at the time when I was launching it, it was only 15, no, $10 a month. So I was like,
Okay.
for this to work, I need to get really good traction straight off the bat. So that's why I was like, before even building anything or spending a penny, let's just get a wait list out there, see what happens. I had like 400 businesses sign up within 3 weeks. So like that was how I approached it because I already had an agency that was doing well, that was working with those sort of clients you mentioned earlier. But the difference was I really looked for that market pull before deciding to spend any money on the SaaS because I knew that it had to have hundreds, thousands of people that would be willing to pay for it even to be worth doing.
And how did you go about building that initial waiting list? You said you had 400 on the list. What did you do? Because that's where
So
most people mess up.
yeah, so literally for me it was Facebook groups. I so like my agency specializes in Squarespace SEO. So I joined Squarespace Facebook groups, and I was just looking at the problems and the questions that people were asking about. Saw that there was loads about SEO. Saw that people were literally even asking, is there a Yoast for Squarespace? I then used a couple of keyword research tools like SEMrush, Ahrefs, typed
Yeah.
in the keywords that people would search for to find my product if it existed, like Squarespace SEO plugin, Yoast for Squarespace, SEO tools for Squarespace. Hundreds, probably thousands across all of the search terms people were searching per month, and there wasn't a solution that currently fulfilled that demand. So I had validation from the data from Google that people were already searching for it. Had validation from the Facebook groups, people asking questions. So literally all I would do is first did a post in the group after I'd provided enough value so that I wouldn't get kicked, to be
Yeah.
like, hey, I saw loads of people asking about this, thinking of building it. Sign up to this waiting list if you'd be interested. Throw up a landing page in like 15 minutes. And then whenever people would post on the groups and on different forums about SEO questions, I would answer it and then be like, hey, if you want to learn more, I'm actually building this. Which, because there was so many questions and so much demand already, like that one post got hundreds of people, and then the responding to other people's posts got, maybe 100 more.
That's what I was going to ask is, was it a very fast pace or very slow burn? So you made the initial post. Did you suddenly go from 0 on the list to hundreds? And then the following up with questions was just adding like 2
Yeah,
people, 3 people at a time?
zero.
Or was it that
Yeah, the
initial
first
slow
one,
burn?
0 to 100 super quick.
Okay. That's
Yeah.
rare though for those type of communities. Maybe I think people have just exhausted them all now, but I think the engagement's dropped. Or is it just that Squarespace customers are very, very engaged? Because I have seen other people try that and not get success. So I'm trying to figure out what you did differently.
I don't think I did anything. I think I'd maybe already answered 50 questions because I had the agency.
Yeah.
Like what I'd imagine most people are doing, they're looking to create a SaaS and then they just post and like look to push something and build a waiting list. I already had equity, like reputation equity in that community because I'd answered so many questions. So that definitely helped. However, I would say the main thing is just like the pull in the market. There was so much demand already that was unfilled that when I did, the post popped off, got like, I don't know, like 80 or 90 likes, I would say, which was a lot in the community.
Yeah.
So maybe luck is the wrong word, but there was just so much market pull that
Just solving a problem that's burning that people want to fix.
Exactly. The problem was that big that people were just like, they didn't care. They just wanted access.
Got it. Okay, so you make the post, you get the initial traction, get some signups, continue to engage with people's questions, adding people to the list over and over. At what point did you say, okay, I'm going to build this? Was it 400 signups, 500 signups? And how did you sort of make that decision in your head? This is enough.
I think I knew at like 100 because it happened so fast. Like because it's not just people signing up to the wait list, it's people commenting below, like saying, I'd use this tomorrow, or like give me access now, that sort of stuff. So I had that qualitative feedback of like, shit, I've got hundreds of people that have signed up, but also the qualitative feedback, people just saying like, I think there was literally people saying, take my money.
Really?
So I was like, even if it's like, it doesn't get much better for that in terms of validation, I would say.
Yeah.
And so basically I gave us 2 months and I was like, whatever we build in 2 months, we are releasing to this waitlist. And that was like
it just
from
an arbitrary 2 months, or was there any like technical decision on why 2 months, not 1 month or whatever?
Well, I knew it couldn't be no code with what we wanted to build. So I was like, okay, it's going to be custom. And then I was just like, 2 months in my head seemed long enough that we could actually make good decisions and do some testing, but short enough that it'd put pressure on us in order to just get something out there. Because what I'd learned from a previous business where we never actually got a product in people's hands, like a prop, we did like testing with mock-ups and stuff, but we never actually had a product that people used out in the field. So I was like, no matter what happens, we have to, as early as possible, just get feedback. So hence I was like, let's just put pressure on and make it work.
Got it. Okay. So a couple of questions off the back there. First, you've obviously had two technical co-founders with the first SaaS that didn't work out. And then now I know you don't have a technical co-founder, but I think you have a full-time agency hybrid role thing going on. So I guess two questions there, now that we're talking about building the initial product, is first, have you found it difficult that you don't have programming background sort of in this world? Because I think that's what puts a lot of new founders off. They're scared that they can't code and they don't want to learn, and then they feel intimidated. So have you found it difficult, or how have you navigated that? And then also, to be honest, like when I heard the way you structured your partnership with your developer, I actually found it quite interesting. So I'd love to get you to share sort of your insights. First of all, how you've structured it and sort of how you've managed that relationship and sort of found it versus hiring someone full time and giving away some equity or sort of doing that whole thing.
Yeah. So I personally didn't find it hard because I'd gone through a program which has like a quite disciplined, structured way of approaching how to build a SaaS business. Like a lot of people that, I mean, maybe a lot of people that actually have successful SaaS businesses, but definitely most people that have never built a SaaS business won't know how to use Jira, won't know what Agile is, won't know what sprints are, wouldn't even know how, they wouldn't even know how, I mean, let's be honest, we know most people don't even know how to run a business, let alone a software business that's quickly like building, releasing and testing product. I'd already gone through all of that. I'd managed developers, I'd managed designers where we were getting wireframes done like 6 weeks before, testing them, adding them to Jira, getting it built out in 2 weeks. So I'd already gone through that disciplined approach, which meant when it came to doing it myself, I'd managed it all already. And in fact, had less control then because like you've got co-founders. Now I was like, well, I've got a clear vision of the product. I know how to run a technical and design team. All we need to do is just move as fast as possible. So I found it super easy. However, I think for most people, it would be really difficult. Like if I was to do it again, you'd have to get a coach, you'd have to get a mentor, you'd have to get something, because I just don't think you'd be able to do it otherwise, because there's so much that goes into it.
Yeah, no, I also, in my opinion, from what I've observed, people who run other businesses like agencies, whatever, find it 10 times harder than people who just come from nothing, because it's a completely different approach to building a business. You mentioned Agile, like with an agency, you have none of that, right? It's very, very black and white, very straightforward. And so I completely agree that definitely, some resources are needed there. But let's assume that you get past that and you sort of understand it. It's still that separation between you genuinely need someone who's developing and someone who's pushing the sales and figuring out all the rest. So correct me if I'm wrong with your story. You found your initial principal developer on Upwork, I think it was, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So if you were to recommend someone, how would they go about doing that, or how did you go about it? Because I know it's worked very well for you. Yeah. And I've heard some terrible nightmare stories of people hiring developers and getting screwed around, and it's usually never worked well.
Yeah. So the actual first one was a recommendation from a friend. So, and when I decided I was going to move away from, he's the one that launched the MVP.
Okay.
And by the way, like when I launched MVP, it was under my agency. So Squarespace didn't exist. It was called Rough Water Media's Squarespace SEO plugin. I didn't even bother with a brand. Yeah, no, it was dreadful. But I didn't even bother with a brand. That's how like determined I was just to get it in people's hands. When I decided I was going to move away from that developer, I hired a designer that, again, I already knew, for about $1,000 in order to get some mock-ups done. And then I went onto Upwork and I put a brief and I said, here are the designs. Oh, I'm going to give you a test job for 5 days in order to see what you can do in 5 days. Happy to pay you. And I'm going to pick the one that does the best. On Upwork, I also then, right at the end of the proposal, of the job spec, I will say, leave a random word at the start of your proposal to know that you've read this. For some reason, I always pick frog, because, I don't know, it's just super easy when I go through the proposal to see if they've left frog at the first. So then I'm like, right, can this person read? And then I just go through and I'll get people to send Loom videos introducing themselves. Can they communicate? Because you need to be working with someone technical that can, one, read, to communicate. And then I
Yeah.
picked the 3 best ones and then just chose the one that was able to build. It was 3 things. It was one, who could build the most, who asked the most and best questions, because obviously they didn't have all the understanding I did and the
Yeah.
users do. So I needed someone that could ask questions. And then thirdly, someone I got on with. They ticked all those boxes. And then, to be fair, I think I did get lucky, because since then there's been some challenges, but in general, it's gone super, super well.
Okay. So just to summarize that process to make sure we got everything. So the first thing is testing readability and thoroughness, because a lot of people on Upwork apply to like 100 jobs at a time. And so they're not really reading, they're just applying. So that's sort of what the keyword is in your case, frog, which is also a first. I haven't heard that word before. Then you're getting the loom, and that's probably also to test language, because I know that language barriers are another issue. So communication, language,
Yeah.
and also
Yeah.
like if they're going to be a long-term developer, you want them at some point to interface with customers, especially if there's technical problems. And if they can't speak the language or they sound weird, that's a problem. And then the third thing is a demo project, right? To sort of put the best candidates up against each other and then sort of evaluate them and make a decision. That demo project, what was it, or how did you structure it? Did you just give them one screen and ask them to build it? Or you mentioned something I found interesting. You said who could build the most. Does that mean that you gave them the entire thing and asked them to do as much of it as they can in 5 days? Or how did you evaluate that?
God, it was like 15 months ago now, so I can't exactly remember. I think I didn't give them everything because I was scared that someone was going to like
steal it.
It was still super early. I was like, I don't want to release everything. I think I gave them like enough that they could get some done, but not enough to complete in a week. So it was like, who got the furthest along that set task that I assigned to do in the week. So I maybe gave enough for a sprint. We do 2-week sprints, and then saw how much I could do in 2 weeks, in 1 week.
Got it. Side technical question. I've heard lots of people do 6 weeks, 1 week, 2 weeks. I like doing a 1 week. Why did you choose 2-week sprints?
We chose 2-week sprints for 3 reasons. One, I felt that fits in. I plan my agency work and my all work in months, and then break it down to 2 weeks.
Okay.
So it fit in with cadence of how I run my other business, which gives me the breathing room to actually be able to do what I need to do. 2, I just think that I couldn't get enough. Well, the main thing is just enough time for me to, 1, actually define the sprints, 2, complete testing, and 3, not put too much pressure on myself, I guess, because I didn't want to, just, I needed it to work because it didn't have co-founders. So setting like a realistic cadence from the start. And that was also how I was taught at the program as well before.
2 weeks.
2 weeks, I think. Yeah, 2 weeks.
Got it. Okay. I've seen different cycles work for lots of different companies. So I don't think that there's a best way. I think it very much depends on sort of your working style, which you highlighted. All right. So you picked the developer. He's a great developer. You're happy with him. You were obviously paying him, I think, per hour, or how did you structure that?
It was a retainer. I think it maybe started off at like $2,000 a month.
And then sort of went up as obviously he brought more people with him to join the company, right?
Yeah. At the time, he had 8 people working for him. I think now he has like 24, with like 2.5 full time with me, and then I have daily stand-ups with him as well.
Got it. Okay, cool. Let's talk about now the growth, because that's the product. So you build the product and obviously you've iterated it. You and I think, and we've spoken about this numerous times, I think we have the same but opposite side of the coin approach to growth. You're very much pull, I'm very much push. You're very much inbound, I'm very much outbound, for different reasons. And I'm keen to sort of debate that with you. So right from the early end, and again, like I think you're the perfect inbound guy. You literally run an SEO agency, which is probably as inbound as you can get. The origin story of the software, now that I know it, is literally inbound from a Facebook group. And that was your first couple of customers. And then correct me if I'm wrong, but 100% of your current customer acquisition is inbound. There's no sales team or paid ads or anything going on.
Not actually. So how I approach outbound is, especially for like a bootstrap company that at the start was founder led, was I created like a list of 50 people that already had influence in the space. So other business owners, influencers, YouTubers, anyone that I felt like had an audience. And then I would either give the product to them for free, give a free SEO audit on the website. I would find some way in order to provide value to them.
Mm-hmm.
At the time, I didn't have an affiliate program, but it was just, there was so much demand and need for what I was building. A lot of them just shared it with their audience anyway. But then I created an affiliate program. So how I approached outbound was like outbound to nodes, and
And
then
then
found
drawing them.
and then get them to push it out rather than me, basically. So I guess I've done a lot of influencer marketing. But yeah, I forgot the question, but I do, not everything comes inbound. I would say 70%.
Okay, comes inbound.
70,
Well, that
70%.
actually leads me to my next question. Is I really want to understand how the growth has changed with the number of users, because what I often see with most SaaS companies is in the beginning, it's super founder led, very, very manual. It's all about reaching out to people one-to-one, getting on demo calls, sort of referring backwards and forwards, doing as much of it as you can personally to draw it. And then after that, you end up building some form of flywheel around it, whether it be like a YouTube channel or a community or a collection of docs or whatever. SEO is the one that I assume that you focus on. And then they sort of realize, okay, to build a sizable business, we need a bit more enterprise sales here, because you start limiting your ability to generate revenue on low ticket deals. So then they push outbound. Going back actually to your original story, because it's impossible to get those big deals with BT and others if you're just doing inbound, right? You need a strong sort of sales force present there because it's long deal cycles, etc. And I'm curious, how have you seen your growth strategy change? In the beginning, I assume it was reaching out to people in these Facebook groups and everything was you. Now I know you have, as you mentioned, those affiliate profiles. And I think is a large number of users coming to your SaaS because of SEO itself. I think that is also a primary driver, right? Is SEO itself for you?
Yeah. Organic search drives 50% of conversions. And then obviously we get inbound through other methods like forums. But like I was just looking at Stripe. Like I'll just share to like put a bit of context on it. But like we've got 707 paying customers, and you can see that like our growth, it's pretty much like 10% month on month. Like it's not speeding up and it's not really slowing down. We had like more churn here, but like you can see that it's pretty much been like steady. So, and I think probably because like I mentioned earlier on that I noticed that there was a certain number of people searching per month for for Squarespace SEO plugin. So I think just historically, there's been just a certain number of users that every month are looking for what I provide, which has been why the growth has been steady. Sorry, what were you going to say?
So that's going to be a next question I have for you. I think you're a very interesting case out of the people that I've spoken to in SaaS, because a lot of your growth and product is completely built off another SaaS business, right? Which is Squarespace itself, which is obviously this big incumbent that's been here for a long time.
Yeah.
Whereas most people, they try and just enter a space and they're not building on top of something else. You're already relying on that. For example, people already using Squarespace. Squarespace is probably spending a lot of money on ads, on outbound, whatever they're doing to get people in. Once they're locked in, then they're looking for tools specific for it. And because you're sort of a market of one, it's almost like you are doing outbound. It's just you're not the one paying for it. Someone else is paying for it.
Yeah.
And then that sort of is filling into you. Would you agree with that characterization?
Yeah, I would agree. And then all it's been is, okay, we're getting a steady number of people. Yeah, because there's 4 million Squarespace websites. So a percentage of those every single month are going to look for SEO solutions.
Correct. And I would assume change. The reason why your growth is linear is probably because Squarespace is linear as well. They continue to reinvest. They're growing their users. Yeah. That percentage of people interested is not changing. But as Squarespace grows, at the same percentage is constant, then you're getting that search traffic and that's sort of filtering into you, which is a very unique way of doing it. But I do wonder, does it worry you if Squarespace disappears or something happens to Squarespace? Because there's
Yeah.
pros and there's cons to doing it this way.
I mean, Squarespace is a public company with like, I think $1 billion, about $1 billion in revenue.
Right.
So what are they there? Yeah, they do like $1 billion in revenue. Yeah, but maybe even more. So like, I'm not worried that Squarespace is going to go away. There's obviously people have asked me before, you worried that Squarespace is going to build like
SEO
an
tools
SEO
themselves.
tool in there, which I think Squarespace has been around for 20 years and they never have so far. And I think with how the landscape is going, like with AI, I think it's much more likely that they create an AI assistant, like an assistant within Squarespace that allows you to do a suite of things, with SEO being one of them. So hey, build me a one-page website, and it builds you one.
Yeah.
Optimize it for SEO, it optimizes, rather than like what we do. I think there's also like and I'm not the first to do this, but often you look at successful use cases in other markets, like the Uber for I've built the Yoast for Squarespace, but there's also successful examples in Webflow, for example, and I'm sure there will be in Framer. So I looked at what other people have done. Yoast grew to like tens of millions of users, got bought for tens of millions. So I guess, like, don't get me wrong, I do worry about it. But then when there's other successful examples in adjacent markets that have exited, that have made millions, it gives you a bit of peace of mind that, okay, Squarespace could, but others haven't.
Yeah.
And it probably wouldn't be a big like play for Squarespace to do that. They're focusing on stuff like payments, courses, memberships, adding those in.
Got it.
So yeah.
All right. Do you have any plans to expand out of Squarespace? Because I think there's two things here, and I think we spoke about this. One of them is just being trapped within Squarespace limits you. Number one, because as you said, they only have 4 million users. So like you cannot affect the number of people that you can go after. It's on them to do it. Now, the pro of that is they're absorbing the cost of getting new users effectively for you by passing it on, right? Because they spend the marketing. I've seen Squarespace ads all the time. So I know that they're spending a lot to sort of help you.
Yeah.
And then you're getting 50% search traffic on that. So for every user they get, or every 2 users they acquire, you acquire sort of 1 on the search traffic. So they're absorbing all your costs, and that's fantastic. But the con is they can also turn marketing budget down because of whatever reason, and then you would sort of be beaten off for that. So I assume you must be looking at wanting to expand into others. But my question there is, you've run on the Yoast for Squarespace. A lot of your marketing material that I've seen is very much, we are the best tool for Squarespace. We are this one. And that's a great lesson, I think, itself in niching down, because clearly the market resonance has been there. The moment you say add a WordPress or Webflow or Squarespace or, sorry, not Squarespace, Shopify, whatever, it would dilute the messaging down. So if you've thought about this, would it be to launch another software, just rebranded the same software just with a different logo on for Shopify or something? Or how would you go about thinking about that, if it's even on your roadmap?
Yeah. So I think, first of all, like, I think there's room for SEO space to 10x within this space. Because if we've got 5,000 users, like from when I looked at it, if we got the same market penetration as Yoast does in WordPress in Squarespace, we could get about 86,000 customers. So I think there's still room for us to over 10x. Obviously, Yoast has been around for a long time. But then I guess it also depends upon like my aspirations for the business. Like, do I think this can be like a business worth hundreds of millions? No.
Yeah.
So I'm not worrying too much about moving into adjacent markets, because I know that the business itself can be very, very profitable and worth a lot of money just in Squarespace. And then if someone bought the company and wanted to move on externally, or layered on different products and offerings on top of or alongside SEO space within Squarespace, I think there's more than enough business growth there. It's not going to be like 1,000xer, but so I have thought about going to adjacent markets, but I don't think I will, because I want to have like a monopoly on the market, and maybe not a monopoly. I think competition is good, but like become synonymous with Squarespace and SEO like WordPress is. And I think that in itself will make it extremely valuable, Yeah. Become synonymous with Squarespace SEO like Yoast is with WordPress and SEO. And I think that by itself will make it a valuable enough business for the outcome I'm looking to achieve for this business. Not the
We're
business
gonna
after that, but for this
we're gonna
business.
get to that at the end, because I think one thing you've always said is you want to build this to sell it, and I think that's a very also unique approach in this SaaS world. But okay, so that's your marketing strategy, or that's
Just to
how it's worked for
clarify
you.
there, um,
Yes.
I've just to clarify, I haven't always built it to sell it. Like my just important to clarify, like my goal is I want to build a $1 billion tech company. Like I love building software, and where I want to be in my life, I want it to be huge. So it's not that it's not that like I want to sell SEO space like right now, and it's just where I want to go in my life. Like in 10 years, I'm probably not still going to be running SEO space. I'm going to be running something much bigger. So like my approach now is just building the best possible business that provides as much valuable to our customers that someone would want to buy, because that's going to help me get to the outcome that I want to get to longer term.
And do you think that would be, I assume, another SaaS product within the overarching industry, just because of this one's limited TAM?
Yeah, it'll be a SaaS product, probably not in SEO.
Something
In
else?
fact, definitely, yeah, it'll be a SaaS product in like a completely different market.
All right. You've spent a lot of time in SEO, so I imagine it's
Yeah.
starting to become very repetitive. Um, all right. So I'm wondering now, like, what would you recommend to other founders? So that's what you've done. But now, what would you recommend to other founders who are just getting started out, who are starting a normal SaaS, so not built on top of a platform like yours are? Because there's different conventional ways that people recommend here. One of them is do things that don't scale. Paul Graham's famous essay, that's called email, it's called outreach, it's sort of being fully founder led, which I know you've spoken about before. But there comes a point where you need to evolve from that and actually do a strategy now that is, number one, you can hand off to a team, and also something that's repeatable, that's not just yourself. And I know this is where you and I sort of butt heads a bit, because I think you're going to say, focus on pulling the market, putting out content, doing SEO. In fact, I was actually even going to ask if you recommend SEO for SaaS businesses themselves that are outside of it. But what in general would be your advice to new founders in terms of how to acquire customers, first at the early stage, and second, when they're just getting past that and they're really wanting to try and now build something repeatable that's not reliable on themselves? What have you sort
Yeah.
of observed, and with the hindsight of what you know, what would you recommend there?
Yeah. I mean, from what I know at the start, I think you have to do things that don't scale. Like, yeah, you can still run ads in the early days in order to get some early feedback, some early traction. But I think that the thing is, regardless of where you are, you have to become customer obsessed and figure out how can I build the best possible product for this market. And personally, I don't think there's anyone else that can possibly do that other than the founder, because you're going to be the driver. So if you're not speaking to customers, building the designs, which I know you like doing, and getting like in the trenches, like I just don't think you're able to build the foundations. Like you've got to be speaking to customers, you've got to be really intensely getting that feedback. There then just becomes a transition in between. I think it's maybe you got a better way of describing this, Courtne, but I think it's like when you can afford to, either because you raise funding or because your MRR is high enough that you can hire someone to replace you. But I think you basically do the founder led, the founder get in the trenches, and then there's just becomes a crossover, either way you raise funding or your MRR becomes high enough that you've got the resources to put people underneath you so you can focus on high leverage tasks. Is yeah.
And when you say putting people underneath you, how would you approach that in your way of building a SaaS, which I know is very inbound? Like if I gave you resources and people, what would
Yeah.
you actually delegate them to be doing on a daily? Is it making content for blogs and then sorting out all the SEO stuff?
I
Like
think it
how would you
depends
approach this?
upon I think it depends upon unit economics. It purely depends upon like I'm definitely not against ads. Like if my LTV was high enough, I would 100% be running ads.
Yeah.
I just financially ads just would not work for me. So I have to look at okay, what is going to give me the best ROI for my unit economics for my business, and for me because I'm so experienced in SEO and inbound, it is that. Like I think it purely depends upon like what is the LTV, what type of customers coming across, are you targeting, what are their watering holes, like where do they spend their time, and then go from that. So like I'm definitely not against ads. I think it just depends upon the unique situation that you're in. Because even if you gave me like £1 million tomorrow, still don't know if I'd run ads. But obviously, if I ran a different business, I probably could, and I would, because I can acquire a customer. I can make more than I can make more from a customer than it costs to acquire them. So I think it just depends upon like the business.
No, and it's a great point, because I think people often say that it's a resource problem. That's why I found it interesting when you said, when MR reaches a certain level, people assume that it's a resource problem. Very often it's not. It's first of all a knowledge problem, because all of these methods require knowing how to do them, first of all. And secondly, there's a lot of them. And as you correctly mentioned, just because SEO works for you or that business doesn't mean it's going to work for mine, even if I do the exact same things, because you have unit economics, you have market forces. Like some markets are just like CRM. I imagine it is ridiculously impossible to try and do SEO for a CRM, right? You're just competing against really powerful companies there. I would assume it's typically hard. Now, SEO is not my forte, but I would assume that that's just a really uphill battle and it's going to take a long time, personally.
Yeah, and it changes. Like SEO works we've got a few SaaS clients. We've got one that's a self-storage software, and we help them get so much of the market because we were early into doing SEO, because it wasn't seen as sexy. People were doing ads, but in fact, people traditionally were doing trade shows, because the ICP was typically older guys that go to trade shows, that in person. We helped them grow a lot in the US because no one was doing SEO. So there were competitors that were much further ahead that hadn't done it, but we were able to get above them. Now, 12 months later, competitors are catching up because they've got higher budgets and they've had a long time. But people are also running ads more aggressively now. So like you're 100% right, markets change. And that's why obviously like you constantly have to evolve, right? Whether it be the product, whether it be marketing, or whatever it is, things change.
And that leads me to a next question. Generally speaking, would you advise SaaS founders to attempt SEO or try SEO? And I want to give you my reasons why I say no, right? And then I want to see you counter them. I tell founders no because a couple of reasons. First of all, I find it ridiculously hard to track SEO conversions. You can sort of gauge the amount of traffic that's coming from it, but like it's not the same as ads or email or any of the other methods, right? So I just found it hard to track, and I'm always going to go for something that I can actually track with, right? First of all. That's just how I work. Secondly, I think SEO requires absolute knowledge of the industry that you're targeting, because you need to be able to actually make good content, and you need to know where their watering holes are, etc. And most people, when they're starting out, they're sort of in that traction stage where they're figuring out the product, which means every single week their features change. Not necessarily their customer changes, but they're learning new things. And so I found it ridiculously hard to try and make content if you don't exactly know who you're speaking to or exactly what you're selling, and if it's changing so much. So I just find it very hard for that reason. Third, I think SEO is something that Google obviously really, really looks at, like how long the website's been there and sort of the market authority. And so it takes a long time, right? You can't change your niche every 2 weeks, and then obviously Google's going to penalize you for that. And my opinion is, when you're starting out, you need people ASAP. Not because you need the money or the customers, but you need the feedback. Otherwise, what are you going to be doing? And that lag between SEO and actually leads coming through the funnel is really, really difficult. And also, in my opinion, I've only seen SEO convert well on SaaS when it is something to do with diving deep into a particular topic, because obviously with SEO, you rank for deep, deep, deep stuff, and then relating the topic back after you provide enormous value to a feature in your tool, right? That's the first way I've seen it work. But that, first of all, requires the feature to be built and looks good and is actually powerful enough to compete against whatever value you're comparing to. And the second thing I've seen SEO do very well is like comparisons. So like I know Zapier does this extremely, extremely well, right? Like Zapier has a great blog where they compare a lot of tools up against each other. And then very often they sort of tie their own offering into it. And I know that works really, really well for them. I think that's a unique situation because, again, just the nature of Zapier, there's so many tools they can compare against. But that also requires understanding your market and sort of positioning it for all of these reasons. And so for all of those reasons, I always say, I think it's great when you hit a scaling point in the company. You sort of have got product market fit dialed in, number one. Number two, SEO helps the other channels because if leads are coming, they're going to get retargeted. Sales team is going to pounce on them. So I think SEO is very much a scale effect. It helps all of the other channels do well. Also, once you are big enough, say ads are running, sales teams is running, there's going to be people naturally searching for you anyways, which sort of SEO captures that traffic, because a big thing people don't do is bid on their own name, right? Either with ads or with SEO, because then they just lose to competitors. And also, at that point, the product is at a state where you can write content because you know what you're talking about and you know who you're talking about. And I've just found that incredibly difficult to do in the beginning. And also then you can play much longer bets, because when you're just starting out, the company might not be alive in the next 3 months, never mind waiting for the SEOs to sort of kick in. So that's my playbook for why I like ads and sales teams, because it's instant, it's trackable. You can chop and change things very quickly. You get feedback immediately. Tell me why I'm wrong and why you'd say SEO is better.
You're not.
Let's play devil's advocate. I'm not.
No, you know, I wouldn't even like. I agree. Like literally, the only reason I did it in my early stages was because that's what I'm good at. But like for most founders, it's not going to work. Like ads is going to be much better, which is why I did forums. Like my forums was your equivalent of like ads. Like I went into forums and that's what I did. You have to get traction early. And if you think that SEO is going to be the thing that gets your SaaS business off the ground and makes it successful, it just isn't. So I'd agree with everything that you said. So yeah.
I was looking forward to a bit of an argument there. We're going to go back and forth.
Like literally, I wouldn't. I couldn't have said it better myself. And I think that you always, obviously, if you're just getting started, like you have to get that feedback, and you just have to do whatever it takes in order to get that.
Got it. Right. Well, let's move past traction then, because I do really want to get some knowledge from you here, because I know you're extremely good at SEO and you know it backwards. So for traction startups, we've established not the move. Now, let's say you're in a bit more of a scaling business. You sort of have product market fit. You've got some channels firing. You've got a decent amount of traffic on the page. You sort of know who you're talking to, all these things, and they want to start building out some SEO. Just give us like some quick hacks or tips. What advice would you give to a specific SaaS business and sort of the best way to approach this? And also, I think some tips on how to approach it would be great. Number 2 would also be setting expectations, because that's the other problem people I think have.
Yeah.
And then 3rd would be sort of managing it for the long term. If we were to bucket into those 3 things, sort of what advice would you give?
Yeah. So it was sort of just getting started, some like quick, easy tips. Then it was managing expectations, setting and then
and then
expectations for
managing it for the long term, because I think with SEO, everything that I know is it's more about setting cadence than it is about getting it right the first time. Posting blogs consistently, etc.
So I'd say for like quick wins, like your 3 quick wins is, first of all, like you're always going to have like a key pillar page that's typically going to target the main software term that someone would just use to describe your business. So self-storage software, Squarespace SEO plugin, CRM software. Make sure you have like a page that's dedicated for the main term that someone's going to describe. Don't try and have like a ClickFunnels sort of page that you think is going to rank. If you like, look at ClickFunnels page, that's not for SEO. That's just for conversions. You want to have then a separate side page that's dedicated for a keyword. Second thing is pain point SEO. So like, the only thing you didn't mention in terms of like pages that work really well for SEO is when target customers are searching something when they're in pain. For example, my Squarespace website isn't showing up on Google. Like 90 people search for that per month, which isn't super high. But if I'm positioned 1 for that, 45 people click on me, you know, a very high percentage of those are going to convert because they're in pain and they're looking for a solution. And then the third thing, which links to the last 2 questions, is just about setting it up where like you're going to win in the long run. You're not going to win from SEO within a few months. So like you've got to set it up that this is something that I know that I have to do because it can be really successful and it can be really profitable. So in terms of managing expectations, which is also linked to the third thing, set up the right systems, either by hiring an agency, working with an expert, or hiring someone internally, where you're like, this isn't going to pay off.
Who would you recommend? agency, on that question, as an agency yourself, what would you recommend?
I'm not going to say like an agency just because I've got an agency that works with SaaS businesses. I would say consider all options and just go with the one that you feel you're most confident to get results. I would say it's going to be agency 9 times out of 10, because to hire an agency for £5,000 a month, they're going to be able to do a lot more with that than hiring someone for £5,000 a month. A head of SEO is going to be £5,000 a month. They're still going to have to hire probably someone underneath them, freelancers, tools, resources. Whereas for an SEO agency, you pay them £5,000 a month. They've got a team of us like 16. They're paying for all the software. Everything's included. Whereas if it's in-house, you have to layer it all. So I would say agency 9 times out of 10. But whatever you do, you have to just say, we're going to do this for at least 6 to 12 months, probably more. We're not going to see an instant ROI, but we know that this is like, if for whatever reason that ad's turned off tomorrow, SEO is going to be the thing that's going to consistently give us that baseline, that foundation of leads and sales coming in every single day. And then in terms of long-term expectations, like it sort of depends upon budget, but SEO results typically take 3 months. 6 months to like really be like, okay, we're starting to see things come in. I would say from zero. It depends. Like I worked with a company called High Five, sports nutrition company. We increased their organic sales by 104% in 3 months. Because they were already going from like, they'd never done SEO before, but they had really good brand search and brand recognition, which Google really loves to see. If people are searching for your business, then SEO becomes much easier.
Okay. Do you get a lot of clients push back on that? 6 months until I actually see return on investment, or not really?
Sometimes, but those just aren't the clients that I want to work with. Like, I only want to work with people that see the value and know that they need it and trust. Because if I've just found clients that question that in the first call or first couple of calls, they're the ones 3 months in, which, I mean, I'll show you an example. I think we've got a bit of time. Just be 2 minutes.
Because I was just trying to think, if I was trying to sell this to my investors or like even the internal stakeholders that I had, and I was like, we're going to deploy X amount of capital for the next 6 months, expecting to get a downstream return. I'm wondering how we'd be able to pull that off. I know I would get pushback from it. Despite the fact I know it's the thing to do, I'm just wondering sort of how you would counter that. If someone watching this is thinking, I know I need to do this, but I need to devote resources to it, capital to it, etc. How do I sell that to my team?
I think that depends upon where the position that the business are in. Like ultimately, those investors are going to be investing in the business because the average SaaS exit takes 7 to 10 years. So are you investing in because you want returns now, or are they investing because they want the exit to sell for 100,000x in 7 to 10 years? So 7 to 8 years. So I think it just depends upon like positioning. In terms of like what that looks like, I think you're 100% right, which is why I will only work with businesses that trust the process, believe in the direction we're going. Like these guys, we began working with them in October 2022. And you can see how long it was pretty much flatline for. It took like pretty much 6 months. In fact, maybe it was November, start of November. It took 6 months for us really to get like
things ramping up,
sort of traction, because they were starting from zero. And I said it takes 6 months. I took these from 5 inbound leads a month to 80 plus inbound leads a week, which is like now it's completely transformed their business. It's generated them tens of millions in terms of business value. So you're 100% right. Like some businesses and investors looking at this thinking, fucking hell, we've got to wait all these months, but you've got to go through these months in order to get to this. And it's completely transformed their business. So it just depends upon what, levels you want to play at and what return horizons you're looking at.
Yeah, and I think the key thing for people to understand there is an inbound lead is not equal to an outbound lead. They are usually way easier to close, and they usually also have way higher value. so the churn is significantly lower. When I see businesses built on inbound versus outbound, the metrics are completely different when it comes to churn, when it comes to the amount of free trials that they need to convert into subscribers. Like an inbound business, the trial conversion is always 10 times higher and the churn is 10 times lower compared to
Yeah.
the other way around, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't mean one works, the other doesn't. It's just, again, setting the correct expectations
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
terms of time and everything that goes into it.
Well, that's why that, you know, if you're going to have a business at a certain scale with certain goals, you need someone like Courtne and you need someone like me. Courtney's going to be your person that's going to go on attack and going to aggressively scale, also build systems. But I'm the person that's going to sit back and be like, well, how do we turn this into an inbound machine? And again, depending upon the levels that a business wants to get to, you're going to need both often.
Yeah. Yeah, very often.
So
And
yeah.
I think the thing that goes missed in this conversation is that they very much play into each other. I love it when I work with companies that have inbound because they help me, right? I have a sales team to then throw on leads. I also have data on sales calls to convert the script higher, and then I have retargeting data to train my models to go out for new ones, etc. But inbound also love it because in times of slow months, we usually carry the team. And also the inbound benefits from all the word of mouth that we're generating. And also
Yeah,
it's a
exactly.
case of both of our systems generate case studies, results, which feed into one another. I assume a big part of SEO is having good reviews, either on YouTube, on Google or whatever.
Of course, yeah.
It doesn't matter if I generate the customer or you generate the customer, we both get reviews and that helps both people. And if we're building the same business, the value of the business is tied to revenue. It doesn't matter who came from. So it comes from the same pot. Cool. So we spoke about the inbound stuff. Now I want to speak to you about what I know you've been working on at the moment a lot and sort of pick your brain there. How do we get more revenue from existing users? And I know you've been spending a lot of time in Intercom working on that. So I don't want to go too deep into it. I just want you to give a quick summary in terms of tools that you'd recommend to founders to implement that you're finding useful, and then sort of how you are approaching getting users to their aha moment a lot quicker and therefore obviously converting trials a lot more once they have already signed up for a trial and stuff. Just your general advice, quick tips there.
So 3 things. First of all, raise prices. Sounds super, super basic, but I put off for far too long increasing my prices. And as long as you do it the right way, you're going to make a lot more money in the long run by increasing your prices. I increased mine by like 50%. It's a big jump, but like from $10 to $15 for the lowest plan, you know, it's a big thing. Second thing is just product-led growth in general. I've been really ruthless on my product recently and just be like super harsh and be like, why would anyone pay? We got a free plan. Why would someone actually go from the free to a paid plan? And why would you get revenue expansion? So why would someone go from the lower plan to the middle plan to the higher plan? Like what actually in the product is causing that? Is it usage based? Is it upon like, there's just neat little things that you can do to get people to upgrade in the product. So like product led growth, I think is key. And then the third thing is like Courtney mentioned it, the aha moment. So increasing how many people in your free trial get to the aha moment or how many people in the free plan who are like trying out different features. Your aha moment is just the moment in the product where people think, shit, this is exactly what I've been looking for. They're going to be people that will stay longer, pay more, and just be all around better customers.
How did you find yours and what is it? I'm quite curious.
So what I did, I set up a product analytics software called June, which is where you tag all the different features in your product. So on a user by user basis, you're able to see which features people are and aren't using. What you then do is a cohort analysis. So I looked at people that have used my product paid for my product and been a customer for longer than 6 months versus people that cancelled during the free trial and then cancelled during the first month. And then I compared the features that those people used across the cohorts in order to see what features did people use and how many times that continue to be customers with me versus those that cancelled straight away or paid but then stopped. Then obviously back that with like interviews. So this is maybe a little bit questionable, but when someone cancels my plan, they have to leave feedback. If they cancel a paid plan, they cannot cancel without leaving feedback.
When you say leaving feedback, is it like a survey or book a call or how are you handling that?
Yeah, just like a text box. You have to leave 20 characters worth of feedback in order to cancel. It's mandatory. And I just say, like, obviously you can cancel at any time. It's fine. But in order for us to improve, we need feedback. So please just share one thing we could have done in order to make the product better. Some people complain, don't get me wrong, and they're like, it's against my rights. I shouldn't have to leave feedback. But like, they can cancel at any time. I just need to know how to improve or my business isn't going to grow. So that helps. And it turns out we've got a couple of aha moments. The two are monitoring. So you can set up for a site audit to happen every week or month, which essentially means that you're going to save hours of time and automatically get notified. So you get that peace of mind, which people really love. And then also we have a dashboard, but the other one is viewing results from the plugin, because it literally just shows you page by page what you need to do to improve. So like, even if you're a novice, complete beginner, it becomes super, super easy. So it helps people overcome the overwhelm and confusion when it comes to SEO. So those are the two in general, which are aha moments.
And what are you doing in the product to push people towards it once you've identified it?
Yeah, good question. So monitoring used to be an option. You would onboard yourself and then set up monitoring. It only takes a click. So it's like, so what we're actually doing is setting it up in the onboarding. So as you're onboarding, it's like, hey, Courtney, would you like your monitoring to be weekly or monthly?
Instead of asking if you want it on or off.
Yeah. So everyone has monitoring, which means everyone immediately feels that peace of mind and that, like, I guess maybe like sunken cost or like buy-in. Like, oh, this is going to monitor it for me every month. That's why I should continue paying, not just because I do my SEO once and done, which some people think. And then the other thing is just like user testing. So when we've got the designs, just like getting as much feedback from customers, blending it in with like watching people use the product using Microsoft Clarity, which I know you find hilarious.
Yeah, you're the first person I've ever heard
of
push a Microsoft product in a SaaS backend. But yes, keep going.
So yeah, getting like that qualitative feedback from June to see why it is, and then just making like good product decisions in order to bring those things like either in the onboarding flow or just a lot more nicely from, I don't know, within the UI in a way that makes sense based upon feedback that we get.
And how are you approaching getting that user feedback? Because you mentioned, doing the designs and then getting users to give you feedback on it. Do you offer incentives for users to like review it? Do you go to the same users every time, or like, what are you doing there? Because I think that's another problem people struggle with. Is it's easy, okay, build designs, get feedback, but how do you get someone to spend their time clicking through a design that doesn't do anything?
Yeah, so I'm super, super lucky, and I'm going to share my screen just because I think that this puts context to it. So I set up a community when I released my product. So I've got like SEO Space community. You can see that I've got, I created like a mini course in it, and you can see that I've got like 1,200 people in it. So you're like
12. This looks like it's powered on Circle, I would assume.
Yeah, it's Circle. So I just created a community on Circle. For initially, all my support was done on here before I moved to Intercom. And you can see I've got almost 1,300 users. I then created a live workshop thing. I mentioned earlier how like we have product market fit. There's so much product pull. And because people are facing that much pain when it comes to SEO, people just gave us feedback. And so much so that I'm able to just do a product feedback session and get 20 people sign up for completely free.
And do they just show up on the event, and then just as you go through it, you just get feedback?
Just show up. Like that's
amazing. I have never seen that before.
My customers are like the best. Like I've got maybe 50 customers, which if I saw, I would give them a hug, buy them dinner. Like people have been so generous with their time because I've got product market fit and because the pain is so much that I can get 20 people to show up for an hour to just watch me go through Figma and then filling a feedback form and then stay for an extra 20 minutes to share feedback. Like it is incredible.
Yeah, no, that's a massive, massive competitive advantage. Is there anything that you did to foster getting people into the community originally? Was it content driven, like free course, free workshops, whatever? Or how did you,
Yeah, yeah,
because
it
you
was
have the people subscribing to the software and then they go from the software to the community, or do they go to the community first and then the software,
software
or
to. So
software
I do
community?
not recommend this, but initially all of our support was done via Circle. So
Okay.
where Intercom is, the little chat bot, that was
You have the
Circle.
embed.
The
Yeah.
problem is in Circle, you have to create an account. So when you signed up for my SaaS, you got invited to create an account on Circle, which meant a lot of people missed their community sign up, tried to access support, but never could because they never signed up to the community, which is why Intercom's so good and we've moved to Intercom. But the reason we got so much adoption, because it was like, if you want to access support, you have to sign up to the community. Do not do that. It'll piss users off. But that's why the adoption was so good. And then we did like weekly webinars, like weekly like office hours, all that sort of stuff, where people just got stuff for free. Like, it sounds like a lot of work, but I got loads of feedback, so it made it worth it.
What do you do now for new users? How do you get them into the community? Is the community gated or is it not gated anymore?
It's not gated, but we don't advertise it. Like, the main way is people sign up for our SaaS and then get invited. So they
So there
just
isn't like a
automatically get
tab
invited.
somewhere in the SaaS to click into the
Yeah, there's
community.
like there's a community tab as well.
Okay, so you're not actively pushing people now to go from the SaaS to the community. Maybe in your emails, because I think you have some automatic emails go out. Do you mention the community in any of
Yeah, we
those,
do.
or
We do,
you are
yeah.
pushing it?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's one email that says for everyone that joined the free trial, like, here's what success looks like.
Okay.
Aha moment, sign up for our community. That
Because
is,
I've had a lot of conversations with people around increasing usage of their product. And one of the ways that I've seen work extremely well is offering content. So, course content, basically. Because obviously, if you have a course content and people find value in it, but the whole course is based on using your product, they therefore sort of have to use your product or they're more accustomed to. So, it does a really, really good job of converting paid users over. And
yeah,
one thing, and maybe you can try this, we've seen it work very well, is you have a selection of courses and one of them is free, but the others are only available to paid subscribers. And the first one
yeah,
obviously
yeah,
is incredible. And then when they convert, they upgrade, and that's sort of how you get
yeah.
that initial push. We found
That's
that
what we're
work
doing.
extremely well.
We've got
Same thing?
a free course on the academy, a free course on the community, and then we're also launching our own SEO academy. So the basic course on the community is free, and then we've got like, it'll be like $500, like a course that's just like A to Z. Here's how to get results in Squarespace SEO, and the only tool that you'll need, well, is Squarespace and SEO Space. So.
And that's going to be an additional purchase. It's not going to be a part of if they're
That'll
on the
be
pro plan of
additional,
the
yeah.
software.
There is a free course, but
Yeah.
the academy will be an additional purchase, yeah.
Okay. I would recommend inside the community having courses that are for the free users and one for the pro, because it does tend to push them towards the pro. We've seen that work extremely well.
Yeah, yeah.
Difficult to balance that with a separate community entirely.
It's actually in the same. It'll all be within it'll all be within
Circle.
Circle.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Cool. All right. So then just some rapid questions that I want to sort of shoot you. I want to shoot you four rapid questions before we wrap up. The first one is your opinion on traveling the world versus getting an office. I know for agency, e-com, that whole world, travel the world is like exactly how we want to do it. But for SaaS and those type of businesses, it's a bit more, let's build an office, let's get a team in, let's do this properly, that sort of way. And I know that you love traveling and you consistently do travel while doing all of this. Do you think that you would be more successful if you bolted yourself in an office, or do you not, or do you not even think
Yeah.
about it? I'm curious to get your thoughts here.
Well, for those of you that don't know watching this, Courtney and I live in the same building. So
Yeah.
it's a coincidence where it wasn't planned. So like, and I did travel all of last year, and I think it can be done. But if you want the optimal setup, like, you want to have a solid base, you want to have somewhere where the team can come, and ultimately, to be honest, for a lot of the reasons and things we've just discussed, being in person is a USP. You're gonna fix things faster. Like, right now, my dev agency is in India. If there's a bug, I have to probably wait until the call tomorrow. If you're all in the office, as long as the developers aren't wired in, I can just go over and say, hey, Courtney, like, this user's just shown this bug. Like, what do you think? So it's a complete USP. So I think it is optimal to, if you like, probably a venture-backed startup. I think not has to be, but it's going to be a USP to be in person, as opposed to remote.
Got it. Second question. If you were to start the entire project again, what advice would you give to yourself?
Honestly, I'd probably just say enjoy yourself. Like, I don't know if I would change anything about how it's done, because everything that I've done and every mistake I've made has got me to this point. So it would literally just be enjoy yourself, because throughout everything that I've seen and where I believe I'm going, the main thing that I've enjoyed is a journey. So I think I've just would tell myself to enjoy the journey more along the way.
Do you not think you have been enjoying it, or sort of where did that bubble up from?
I've been doing like 80 to 100-hour weeks. Like, I was in Bali last year for 5 months, and I would say for 4.5 of those months, I was doing like 80 to 100-hour weeks. I would get back, my girlfriend would be asleep, and I wouldn't spend any time with her until like Sunday. So I was traveling the world, and at times I was enjoying it, but at times I punished myself to make myself work harder, because I thought that was the only way, and I was working harder, not smarter. So my advice would be to enjoy yourself, trust the process, and just, probably work smarter, not harder.
Amazing. Final question for you, Henry. What is the number one problem that you're struggling with in the business at the moment, and how do you plan on solving it?
The number one problem, because obviously my SEO space is a group. It has the plugin, it has the as the agency. The number one problem that I'm facing at the moment is hiring people in that agency that can replace what I do, so that I can focus on high leverage tasks that's going to grow SEO space more, essentially.
Is there a specific reason why that's a problem? Is it just a lack of talent in the market, or costing, or why would you say that's a problem?
Probably because I right now I haven't pushed hard enough on the hiring. I think it's a me problem. I haven't pushed hard enough, and I haven't done enough in order to find the right talent. Because as I just said, I've been trying to do everything and everything. But when you get to a certain position in your business, it just physically isn't possible. You've only got a certain amount of bandwidth. I've been consuming all of that bandwidth for 18 months, which means that I don't have a clear enough head, and I don't have the bandwidth to be able to make good decisions. So the biggest problem is just hiring people in the agency to save more of my time, so that I can then focus on the group more to make like better high leverage decisions.
Got it. Just a bonus question I actually wanted to ask from that. In order to have that problem, it would assume that the agency is growing really well and it's doing quite well. And I know that your SaaS is your primary lead flow or lead magnet driver for it. So I want to sort of understand, how do you trigger essentially an agency sale? Or how do you link the SaaS users to the agency? Do you have something sitting there that if they're a pro user at a certain level, that triggers you to get involved? Is there like something in the app that has like, do you want us to do this for you? Click this button. Or sort of, how do you push someone who comes in as a SaaS subscriber, doesn't know that you have an agency? And how do you decide if they're worth a fit and then sort of nudge them to that way? Or how do you draw those two worlds connected? I think that's a really valuable and important point.
So how it works is, this is the SEO Spaces website, and there's a hire us here. So main call to actions are install the plugin, but obviously the nature of it is some people are just going to click hire us, where they can book a call directly with me. But then on the software, there's just a button that says hire us. They click that, and it's a little bit neat, but because I just clicked on that, I've just been tagged as interested. So my main thing that I push is the plugin. So like I don't push hire us. I only, again, as me and Courtne spoke about, I'm a pull person. So I lure people to clicking hire us either here or here. And then when they click here, that's when I'm then on the attack. Maybe the wrong word. But like I pull people to get them to show they're interested. And that's where I go a little bit more. Hey, Courtne, I see that you saw that you're interested in someone doing it for you. I understand that you probably want to save tens, maybe hundreds of hours of doing it yourself by just hiring an expert. Here's what hundreds of people have already said about working with us. Click the link below to book a discovery call. So just leave little lures there,
Breadcrumbs.
breadcrumbs, and then if people want to go that route, then I make it as easy as possible for them.
And when you say tagged, I would assume Intercom, and then potentially you can reach out to them in the chat.
They're actually tagged at the moment on MailChimp, although we will be moving it to Intercom. Just historically, it was set up on MailChimp before, and it's not like a key. Yeah, we just haven't moved it across yet, but it will be on Intercom.
Cool. Well, again, maybe just some advice I give you is, I think I mentioned this, but if you tag them in Intercom, you can trigger an automation so they can actually book the call directly in Intercom without having to leave. And the nice thing is if they don't book, you can continue the conversation and follow up in Intercom, right? So basically send them a message, hey, I saw you didn't book. Is there any reason why? Have a bit of a conversation. Again, you need sales team or something in there managing it. But we've seen that work extremely well. And also just simplifies tech stack and stuff as well. And they don't have to leave pages.
That's what I need. Whatever. Yeah, I don't like MailChimp. It's pretty dreadful. So I'm enjoying moving across to Intercom.
Cool. Awesome. Well, I appreciate your time, Henry. This has been really valuable, at least for me. I've learned a lot of things and definitely sharpened my inbound sword. If anyone is on Squarespace and wants anything related to SEO, you just saw the website. I believe you have a new domain for us. It's seospace.co. Is it
I didn't get the
or?
.com. He was asking for like $200K. So someone wants to lend $200K to buy a domain. let me know. And one thing I'll say for anyone listening, like if anyone is thinking of getting advice from Courtne or like working with Courtne in any basis, I 100% recommend it. I see him like every day working downstairs. I've known him for a long time and I can vouch for what he's doing and how solid he is. So yeah.
Awesome. Really, really appreciate that. And just like, as you said, if anyone wants SEO space, I recommend Henry. And in general, just SEO advice. Like he really has been doing this for like a long time. I mean, SEO is one of those things that to do it for so long and do it so deep, you have to love it. And more importantly, you have to be good at it, right? And so certainly vouch for him and recommend him. But I'm cool, Henry. Appreciate it. And hopefully we'll see you on the channel soon sometime.